Hey, crime connoisseurs. If you're like me, you love diving into a good book. I especially love finding a book about cases we cover. But sometimes it's hard to find the time to sit and read. We live in an on-the-go society. Thankfully, Audible makes it easy to instantly access the books we love without sacrificing our time. With over 180,000 audiobooks and more, you will undoubtedly find one that will grip you and leave you not wanting to pull away while still being able to do other things. You can get a free 30-day trial membership by going to audibletrial.com/ccpod to start listening to your favorite books. That's audibletrial.com/ccpod for your free 30-day trial membership. Hello, my fellow crime connoisseurs. I'm your host, Grace D. Today's case is one that I want to give everyone a trigger warning from the start. The triggers include sexual assault and harm to children. I will let you know the triggers before those details arise, but I wanted you to all know before jumping in. What would you do if the place you're supposed to feel the most secure, your home, is invaded in the middle of the night? Your spouse and children are home with you. You're being robbed and told as long as you comply, everything will be all right, so you do as they say. But unbeknownst to you, horrors will soon come to you and your family. This is the case of the Petit Family. On the evening of July 22, 2007, 48-year-old Jennifer Hawk Pettit and her youngest daughter, 11-year-old Michaela, went grocery shopping at the grocery chain Stop & Shop in Cheshire, Connecticut. Michaela was making her family dinner, and the two needed to pick up some ingredients for the occasion. After about 15 minutes, Jennifer and Michaela headed home to prepare dinner for the family. Little did they know that they had caught a man's eye who quickly became intrigued with them. Joshua Komisarjewski was at the Stop & Shop meeting up with a contractor to get paid for the work he had done. While there, he spotted Jennifer and Michaela entering the Stop & Shop. As Jennifer and Michaela left the store, Komisarjewski noticed the vehicle they were getting in was nice and decided to follow them. As Jennifer pulled up to their home at 300 Sorghum Mill Drive, Komisarjewski took notice of their house. Komisarjewski thought it would be nice to be there someday, not to have to worry or stress over finances. After he returned home, he received several phone calls from his friend Stephen Hayes. Hayes wanted to meet up and talk about how to come up with ways to get money fast, whether they obtained it by legal or illegal means. At around 10 p.m., Komisarjewski decided to meet up with Hayes. He had Hayes meet him at the Stop & Shop parking lot in Cheshire. Hayes got into Komisarjewski's vehicle, and they drove around for a while, trying to devise a plan. They tried figuring out some contracting work to generate money, but none of their ideas were fast enough for the cash they were trying to obtain. Then they started thinking of illegal options. One option was to surprise people at ATMs and force them to withdraw their funds, or catch people by surprise coming out of bars late at night and rob them. Neither of these options panned out for them, and they continued to drive around aimlessly. At this point, Komisarjewski recalled seeing Jennifer with her nice car. He remembered the way to her home after following her and thought about how they could have a lot of money in the house, and he mentioned this to Hayes. So, they made their way to the Pettit residence. They parked on the street around the corner, slightly out of sight. Komisarjewski and Hayes disguised themselves before they made their way to the house. Komisarjewski took a dark t-shirt, cut some holes in it, and tied it around his face. Hayes had a work hat, cut holes for the eyes and nose, and then pulled it down over his face. They also put on rubber gloves. Hayes brought a black BB gun with him that he had. Around 2:30 a.m., Komisarjevsky and Hayes approached the back of the house to see if any lights were on or if anyone was awake. They found Dr. William Pettit Jr. asleep on the couch in the sunroom. They proceeded to do a walk around of the house, checking the doors and windows. Each one they tried was locked until they reached the Bilko door at the back of the house, unlocked, and they could enter the basement. For anyone who doesn't know what a Bilko door is, it's the doors on the house's exterior to access the basement from outside. As they entered through the Bilko doors, Komisarjevsky checked the basement door, which was also unlocked. They made their way into the basement and devised a game plan. Komisarjevsky said that he didn't think he could take Dr. Pettit alone, and Hayes said he didn't think he could sneak up on him quietly enough to get close to him. Hayes suggested that Komisarjevsky find something like a bat or a club in the basement, knock him out, and tie him up. Komisarjevsky entered the basement and found a baseball bat leaning on the stairs leading up to the kitchen. He grabbed the bat and made his way upstairs. Hayes remained outside and looked through the windows into the sunroom where Dr. Pettit was asleep on the couch. Komisarjevsky approached the couch and stood behind Dr. Pettit. He could see Hayes through the window, motioning to strike. Komisarjevsky struck Dr. Pettit in the head, and he let out a horrific scream. Komisarjevsky hit him repeatedly to silence him, and he backed him into the corner of the couch. Dr. Pettit was profusely bleeding from his head. Komisarjevsky then unlocked the front door to let Hayes in, and they tied up Dr. Pettit with rope they had found in the basement. Dr. Pettit asked them who they were and what they wanted, to which they replied they were only there for the money. They told Dr. Pettit they would be gone once they got what they wanted. Komisarjevsky asked if anyone else was in the house. Dr. Pettit told him his wife and 2 daughters were upstairs. Komisarjevsky and Hayes made their way up the stairs, each with rope, Komisarjevsky with the bat, and Hayes with the BB gun. They passed the daughter's room and went into the master bedroom to subdue Jennifer first, only to find that Michaela was in there with her. They had fallen asleep watching TV. Hayes went to the side of the bed that Jennifer was on, and Komisarjevsky went to Michaela's side. Hayes put his hand over Jennifer's mouth and gently shook her awake. Komisarjevsky did the same with Michaela. Jennifer and Michaela complied when they were told to roll onto their stomachs and put their hands behind their backs. They proceeded to tie Jennifer and Michaela's hands and feet. Komisarjevsky and Hayes then went into the oldest daughter's room, Haley. Hayes stood over her, and Komisarjevsky stood at the headboard. Komisarjevsky shook Haley awake, and she asked them what they wanted and to please not hurt her. He explained that they wouldn't hurt her. They were just there for money and would be on their way when they got it. He then told her to roll onto her stomach, put her hands behind her, and Haley was tied up just like her mom and little sister. They put pillowcases over everyone's heads so they could remove their face coverings after this. They began to go through the house and take anything valuable. When they went back into the master bedroom, Jennifer was telling Hayes where jewelry and different items of value were. This frustrated Komisarjevsky because the intention was strictly cash, but Hayes was going for other valuables. Komisarjevsky went downstairs to check on Dr. Pettit and found that he was still bleeding significantly from his head. He grabbed a towel from the kitchen and held it against Dr. Pettit's head to stop the bleeding. They searched the house for money but found none. Jennifer told them they didn't have a safe, but Hayes found a $20,000 to $30,000 check register. They discussed sending Jennifer to the bank in the morning to withdraw $15,000. They didn't want to risk raising suspicion by withdrawing the entire amount. They told Jennifer if she did this, no one would be hurt. They just wanted the money and would be on their way. Jennifer agreed. Komisarjevsky and Hayes kept going back and forth between upstairs and downstairs to check on everyone. At this point, it's starting to get light out, and it dawns on them their car is still parked on the street around the corner. They argued about how and where they would move the vehicle. Until now, no one was restrained to anything. Their hands and feet were tied up. Hayes was worried that when they went to move the car, the family would scatter and call the police. Hayes and Komisarjevsky returned upstairs to restrain Jennifer, Haley, and Michaela. Komisarjevsky went into the master bedroom, untied Michaela's feet, and took her into her room. He made Michaela get on her bed. He untied one of her hands, wrapped the rope through the bed frame, and then tied her other hand at the wrist. He did the same thing to her feet, tied one ankle, wrapped the rope through the bed frame, and then tied the other ankle up. Hayes restrained Jennifer. He laid Jennifer on her stomach and tied her sprawled to the bed. Komisarjevsky went into Haley's room to secure her. Haley's headboard style was different from her parents and her sisters. It didn't have a crossbar. This caused her to be tied up slightly different. She was tied up at the wrist and the ankles, but Komisarjevsky used the bedpost to restrain her. Up to this point, they restrained Jennifer, Haley, and Michaela. Dr. Pettit was not tied to anything. He was sitting on the couch, with only being bound by his feet and hands. Hayes and Komisarjevsky went back downstairs and asked Dr. Pettit for the keys to his vehicle. The house was in such shambles from them ransacking it for the valuables. Hayes went back upstairs and asked Jennifer where the keys to her car were. She told him where the keys were, and they found them. Uncover the secrets of your dog's DNA with Wisdom Panel, the world's leading canine genetics test. With a simple cheek swab, Wisdom Panel can reveal your dog's breed, ancestry, health traits, and so much more. Understanding your dog's genetic background can help you provide the best care possible. Whether it's identifying potential health risks, understanding their behavior, or simply satisfying your curiosity about your dog's unique heritage, Wisdom Panel delivers the insights you need. Their state-of-the-art technology analyzes over 350 breeds, types, and varieties, and screens for over 200 genetic health conditions. Plus, their easy-to-understand reports make it simple to learn about your dog's genetics. Join the millions of pet parents discovering their dog's story with Wisdom Panel. Order your kit today and start exploring your dog's DNA. Because every dog has a tale, and Wisdom Panel helps you tell it. Go to wisdompanel.pxf.io/ccpod to learn more about your four-legged friend. That's wisdompanel.pxf.io/ccpod. Komisarjevsky and Hayes gathered all the portable house and cell phones from within the house and put them in a central location so they knew where they were. Hayes went out to the sunroom door and got into Jennifer's vehicle. Komisarjevsky went into the basement, out the Bilko door, and headed to his Chevy van. They drove down Mountain Road and pulled into a condo complex across from West Main Street at the end of Mountain Road. Komisarjevsky parked his van in a visitor spot, attempting to hide it in plain sight. Hayes picked up Komisarjevsky, and they drove back to the Pettit residence. They re-entered the home through the sunroom. Dr. Pettit was still sitting on the couch when they returned. Dr. Pettit asked if Jennifer and the girls were all right. Komisarjevsky reassured him that everyone was behaving and everything would be okay once they got the money. It was around 5 a.m. Komisarjevsky heads upstairs and goes into Michaela's room. Komisarjevsky noticed that she was much more stressed since Michaela was separated from Jennifer. She was sweating excessively, so he went downstairs and got Michaela a glass of water. He untied Michaela's hands and gave her the water. After she finished the glass of water, he let Michaela lay back down without tying her hands back up, trying to make her feel more comfortable. During this time, they talked about things like music and such. Komisarjevsky periodically checked on Haley and Jennifer and Dr. Pettit. Hayes and Komisarjevsky are biding time for the bank to open at this point. Tensions are building between the two of them because they've been there much longer than they anticipated. The sun is coming up and it's getting lighter out. Now they have to move Dr. Pettit to another location in the house in fear of him being seen in the sunroom, bound and with a towel to his head to stop the bleeding. They untied his feet, and Komisarjevsky asked Dr. Pettit if he could walk down to the basement. He said he could, so Komisarjevsky helped him. Dr. Pettit was a little shaky from the shock and the loss of blood. He was no longer bleeding as much as he previously was. Dr. Pettit was moved to the basement and restrained to the concrete column. Komisarjevsky brought down some cushions for Dr. Pettit to sit on and put behind his head and back. Hayes stood over them with the BB gun while they tied Dr. Pettit back up. Hayes and Komisarjevsky head back upstairs into the sunroom. Hayes started to clean up just in case someone could see in. There wouldn't be any signs of a struggle or give off any red flags that something was wrong. The table was flipped over and there was blood on the couch and tile. Hayes placed the table upright and threw a blanket over the couch to cover the blood. Komisarjevsky and Hayes started to think about the parents needing to be at work in the morning, so Komisarjevsky asked Jennifer what time she was due in, and she had told them that she worked in the school districts and was off for the summer. When Hayes asked Dr. Pettit, he explained that he was set to begin at 8:30 but would need to be at the hospital to start rounds at 7 a.m. Komisarjevsky and Hayes go upstairs and untie Jennifer. She asked if she could peek in on the girls to ensure they were okay, and Komisarjevsky agreed. Allowing this helped reassure and keep Jennifer calm, and it helped Michaela calm down a little more too. They bring her downstairs, sit her on the love seat in the living room, and Komisarjevsky reties her hands and feet. Hayes grabs the house phone from the kitchen for Jennifer to make a call on behalf of Dr. Pettit. They gave the phone to Jennifer to call, saying that Dr. Pettit would be late to work, but she couldn't dial it, so Komisarjevsky had to untie her again for her to complete the call. Jennifer called out for Dr. Pettit. Komisarjevsky tied her back up. Hayes put the phone back in the kitchen, and they thanked her and told her she did well. After this, Hayes felt more comfortable with Jennifer going to the bank to withdraw the $15,000. They decided to have Jennifer go to the Bank of America in Waterbury. They chose this location hoping that Jennifer wouldn't be as well known and that the bank couldn't tell she was in distress. Now it's about 6:30, 6:45 a.m. The daylight is out, and they still have several hours to kill until the bank opens. Hayes kept pacing back and forth in front of the windows. Komisarjevsky was getting annoyed by this. He decided to go back upstairs to check on the daughters. He stopped in Michaela's room first. He gave her a glass of water and talked with her. Michaela had to go to the bathroom, so he untied her and let her use the bathroom in the master bedroom. When she was finished, she came back into her bedroom. Komisarjevsky tied her ankles again, but let her hands be free. He went into Haley's room to check on her. He offered her a glass of water, but she said she wasn't thirsty. While Komisarjevsky was in the room with Michaela, Hayes motioned for him. He followed Hayes into the office to talk without anyone in the house hearing them. Hayes then went into the garage, grabbed several plastic containers, emptied the contents in the sink, and then left in the family's tan SUV. Hayes drove to the BP gas station on Main Street in Cheshire, filled the containers with gas for about $10, and then returned to the Pettit residence. Hayes and Komisarjevsky discussed their plan for getting the money and making a quick exit. Hayes would take Jennifer to the bank to withdraw the $15,000 around 9 a.m., and Komisarjevsky would gather the girls and Dr. Pettit and put them in the other family car. He would then douse the house with the gasoline that Hayes got. When Hayes returned with Jennifer and the money, they would light the house on fire to eliminate any potential evidence left behind. Then, Hayes and Komisarjevsky would flee in the Pettit's SUV. It's now 9 a.m., and Hayes unties Jennifer for them to go to the Bank of America. Jennifer drives them to the Bank of America. Hayes sits in the passenger seat with the BB gun. When they get to the bank, Jennifer exits the SUV. Hayes gets in the driver's seat and then drives to the other end of the parking lot. While Jennifer is in the Bank of America, she tells the teller that she needs to withdraw $15,000 because her family is being held hostage at her house. Bank manager Mary Lyons quickly took action and called 911.
We have a lady who says that her husband and children are being held at their house. The people are in a car outside the bank. She's getting $15,000 to bring out to them. If the police are told, they will kill the children and the husband. She says they are being very nice, and they told us they wouldn't hurt anybody. If she got back there with the money, she believes them.
Does your furry friend deserve the best? Of course they do. That's why there's BoxDog, a seasonal box of premium products designed just for your pooch. With BoxDog, you can spoil your pet with a fun and exciting selection of high-quality items. From gourmet treats and chew toys to comfy apparel and unique accessories, BoxDog has it all. Each box is packed with hand-selected products guaranteed to wag tails and bring joy. But BoxDog isn't just about products. It's about providing a personalized experience for your pet. You can customize each box to suit your dog's specific needs and preferences, ensuring they get what they love every time. And the best part? BoxDog delivers straight to your door, making it a convenient and hassle-free way to keep your pet pampered. So why wait? Treat your dog to the luxury they deserve with BoxDog, because every dog deserves a box full of happiness. Order your BoxDog today. Go to boxdog.pxf.io/ccpod. That's boxdog.pxf.io/ccpod. During this time, Hayes is growing nervous. Hayes called Komisarjevsky explaining Jennifer was taking a long time in the bank, and he said to give it some time. Jennifer is exiting the bank as Hayes notices and drives up to her for her to get into the front passenger seat. She tells Hayes that she was able to withdraw the $15,000 and had the cash in her bag. While Hayes and Jennifer were at the bank, Komisarjevsky stayed behind with Dr. Pettit, Haley, and Michaela. He went into the basement to check on Dr. Pettit and then headed upstairs to check on the girls. Haley needed to go to the bathroom, so he untied her and let her use the bathroom. When she was finished, he tied her up again in the same position. He asked her if she wanted any water, to which she declined. Komisarjevsky went into Michaela's room to check on her. They talked about things such as school, summer plans, and whatnot. Trigger warning. Komisarjevsky cut Michaela's clothes off of her with scissors and performed oral sex on her while she was tied up and against her will. He took pictures with his camera phone, and he was so aroused that he ended up ejaculating on Michaela's stomach. Komisarjevsky untied Michaela, put his face mask back on, and removed the pillowcase from Michaela's head. He allowed Michaela to take a shower in the master bedroom. When she finished showering, she returned to her bedroom. Komisarjevsky stepped into the hallway so Michaela could get dressed. Once she was dressed, he retied her to the bed. When Hayes and Jennifer returned, Komisarjevsky tied Jennifer back up and placed her in the living room on the love seat. Komisarjevsky and Hayes start arguing about what to do now with the Pettit family and starting the fire. During this time, Komisarjevsky tells Hayes about what he did to Michaela and how he made her shower. Hayes noticed that Michaela was wearing different clothes. Hayes starts pacing back and forth downstairs as if he's trying to psych himself up for something. Komisarjevsky is in the dining room, and after the fourth or fifth time of pacing, Hayes goes into the living room and is there for about 15 minutes. Komisarjevsky is still in the dining room, and suddenly he hears an all-too-familiar sound in the basement, the Bilko doors. Komisarjevsky jumps up, screaming for Hayes that Dr. Pettit broke free. Hayes goes with Komisarjevsky toward the basement. As they talk, Komisarjevsky sees behind Hayes that Jennifer is lying lifeless on the floor, her head on the love seat, and her pants are down to her ankles. Komisarjevsky can see that Jennifer's face has a bluish-purplish look, her tongue is sticking out, and her eyes are puffing. Given his experience as an EMT, he knows that Jennifer has been strangled to death. Komisarjevsky went down into the basement to see if Dr. Pettit had made it out of the house. When he realized that Dr. Pettit did in fact make it out, he ran back up to the main level of the house frantically, telling Hayes that they needed to leave now that Dr. Pettit had made it to the neighbor's house. Hayes looked out the window and saw an unmarked cop car. Panic is ensuing both Hayes and Komisarjevsky now. Hayes took the bag with the cash and valuables and handed it to Komisarjevsky. They take the gasoline that Hayes had brought and start pouring it throughout the house, in the kitchen, sunroom, living room, up the stairs, through the hall, and into the master bedroom. Dr. Pettit makes it to his neighbor's driveway and yells for his neighbor, Dave, it's Bill, call 911. When Dave Schmick opens his garage door, he's met with the sight of a badly beaten Dr. Pettit. Dave almost didn't recognize him due to how badly he was beaten and all the blood. Dave asks him if anyone is in the house, and Dr. Pettit says the girls, and he immediately calls 911.
Emergency. Are you police? Yes. I got Bill Pettit here who's hurt, my neighbor. All right, get in the house. You two get in the house. Get in the house. I need a one-on-one here now.
In the call, Dave is talking with the 911 operator, and while he's talking to them, an officer comes up, takes the phone from him, and yells at him and Dr. Pettit to get in the house. The officer then tells the operator he needs a 101 here now. The home's interior is now covered with gasoline all over the place. Komisarjevsky sees someone in the bushes. They strike a match, and the house engulfs in flames. They run to the Pettit SUV. Komisarjevsky gets into the driver's seat, and Hayes gets into the passenger seat. They book it out of there. While fleeing the scene in reverse, Komisarjevsky smashes the SUV into a police cruiser. This caused him to jerk the wheel, and he ended up in some bushes. In a panic, it was as if Komisarjevsky forgot how to drive, to which Hayes grabbed the shifter, put the SUV in drive, and told him to hit the gas. Komisarjevsky floored it, going off the curb and into the street. Komisarjevsky comes up to the curve, and two police cruisers are barricading the road. There's an officer outside of the vehicle with a rifle aimed at Komisarjevsky and the others on the sides of them. Komisarjevsky didn't stop. They needed to get away. He crashed into the two cruisers, and the airbags deployed. Officers are yelling to get out of the car, hands out of the car, to come out slowly. Komisarjevsky complied. He got out of the car, laid face down on the pavement, and an officer came over and placed handcuffs on him. He was asked if anyone was in the house and if there were any other accomplices. Komisarjevsky said it was only him and Hayes, and that 3 people were in the house, one of which he believed to be deceased. Komisarjevsky told the officer there were 2 girls alive in the front-facing bedrooms and that there were 2 windows for each room, that was where the girls were. The officer got on the radio and relayed the information. After several hours of terror and torture, Komisarjevsky and Hayes were apprehended and arrested. Upon inspection of the home, first responders were faced with a grueling scene. On the main floor, they found the burnt remains of Jennifer. When they made their way upstairs, they came face to face with the oldest daughter, 17-year-old Haley. Haley had somehow managed to break free from her restraints and made it to the top of the stairs before collapsing. One of the gas containers was found underneath of her, attached to remnants of her clothing. The charred remains of little Michaela, who was merely 11 years old, were found still tied to her bed. Paul Mackuk, a detective in the state fire marshal's office, described finding a burned pattern when he examined the house hours after the fire. The pattern indicated that a flammable liquid had been poured down the second-floor hallway outside of the girls' rooms, at the bottom of each bed, and across the beds. Medical examiners determined that the heat and the fire damaged the bodies of Haley and Michaela, though they died from the toxic effects of the heavy smoke. Dr. Pettit was taken to St. Mary's Hospital in Waterbury with several large lacerations to his head. He had lost 5 to 7 pints of blood and had to receive a blood transfusion. He was in the hospital until it was time for his family's funeral 5 days later. Shortly after being apprehended, Komisarjevsky and Hayes were interviewed by detectives. Detective Vitello of the Cheshire Police Department and Detective Medina of the Central District Major Crimes Squad of the Connecticut State Police interviewed Komisarjevsky, and Detectives Buglione and Consorte of the Connecticut State Police interviewed Hayes. During Komisarjevsky's interview with detectives, he started to give a written statement. After completing 1 page, detectives asked him if he would consent to an audiotaped statement, which he did. During this statement, Komisarjevsky spared no details. He admitted to following Jennifer and Michaela home from the Stop and Shop, breaking in, beating Dr. Pettit in the head with a baseball bat, tying up and restraining the Pettit family, robbing the Pettit family, and sexually assaulting Michaela. Komisarjevsky, however, blamed Hayes for wanting to murder the family and torch the residents. According to Komisarjevsky's interview with the detectives, Hayes was nervous about DNA evidence and paranoid about how he had slipped up and said Hayes' name. Hayes was the one who insisted on getting gas and lighting the house on fire. Komisarjevsky told detectives that Hayes started pouring the gas throughout the house, up the stairs, and into the master bedroom. He said he went upstairs and shut Haley and Michaela's doors to buy them time. When Detective Vitello asked why he hadn't just untied them, Komisarjevsky said he didn't know, he wasn't thinking, and messed up. Komisarjevsky noted that on the way to the car, he noticed that Hayes was not behind him and had gone back upstairs. Hayes returned downstairs, discarded an empty gas bottle, and tried to light a match. Komisarjevsky said he thought Hayes was putting gas in the office to get rid of DNA where they had been previously to discuss plans. Komisarjevsky denies strangling anyone, pouring any of the gas, nor lighting the match, but admits to being in the home, tying up and restraining the family, physically assaulting Dr. Pettit, and sexually assaulting Michaela. Hayes' interview with detectives was a verbal statement. Hayes told detectives almost the same story as Komisarjevsky, except for when it came to the rape of Jennifer and the fire. According to Hayes, Komisarjevsky instructed Hayes to have sex with Jennifer to square things up since he had assaulted Michaela. Hayes claimed to smell the gas after raping and strangling Jennifer. Hayes denies pouring the gas and starting the fire. Detectives asked Hayes to give a written statement, but Hayes wanted to consult an attorney first, so detectives ended the interview. Detective Buglione showed Hayes the notes he had taken during the interview. Hayes agreed that the notes were accurate and signed, saying that the notes and questioning had stopped after requesting for an attorney. On August 7, 2007, Komisarjevsky and Hayes were arraigned and requested to be tried separately. On October 31, 2007, Komisarjevsky pleaded not guilty to all 21 felony counts that he had been indicted on. Both defendants offered to plead guilty in exchange for life sentences, but prosecutors were seeking the death penalty for both and pushed for trials, forcing the state to revisit an unsettling crime and its lone survivor to relive it in the courtroom. On May 28, 2008, the Pettit home was torn down and cleared out. Dr. Pettit lost everything that grisly day in July. It was no longer his home, and he moved back in with his parents since they had left the hospital. Where a house once stood at 300 Sorghum Drive, it is now a memorial garden in the middle of the neighborhood. Neighbors in the community started the memorial garden, and a local nursery donated plants, truckloads of soil, and labor. Hayes' trial began in September of 2010. During the trial, computer and technology expert John Farnham was shown 8 pictures off Komisarjevsky's cell phone that were taken while he and Hayes brutalized and killed Jennifer and her 2 daughters, Haley and Michaela. The jury was spared the shocking images, but Farnham was asked to describe each one. In 2, he said Komisarjevsky, who faced trial after Hayes, was photographed nude and posing suggestively. 5 showed a young female with her arms tied above her head, a cloth over her face, and a close-up of her underwear. The 8th photo was of an older female with her legs spread apart. Dr. Pettit was visibly upset during Farnham's testimony, but remained composed, occasionally gripping the courtroom railing. Dr. Pettit left the courtroom after listening to a detective recount Hayes' confession of the crime. He also skipped the medical examiner's testimony, which included details of the rape of his 11-year-old daughter. Medical examiner Wayne Carver testified that Haley was lying face down in the hallway. The front of her clothing was more severely burned than the back, indicating she had been directly exposed to fire. She died from smoke inhalation. He speculated that she had managed to free herself after being tied to her bed and made her way down the hall, and that Michaela had likely died a painful death. During the trial, Hayes' attorney, Thomas Ullman, entered into evidence 911 tapes that suggested officers responding to the horrific home invasion murder made a series of glaring mistakes that may have cost the victims their lives. The tapes show how Cheshire cops were skeptical of Jennifer when she walked into the bank and told the teller she was being robbed. Lieutenant James Fasano told dispatcher Donald Miller after Jennifer and the kidnapper Hayes drove off, quote, "Apparently she came into the bank. She tried to get out some money. One of the accounts was in her husband's name, and then she says, well, my kids are at home tied up, so we don't know if they really are or if she was just trying to get money out at this point. She was calm. She didn't appear upset. She walked into the bank. She got the money. She was by herself. The other person was in the car." Unquote. The tapes obtained by the Hartford Courant indicated that the clueless cops were still holding on to the twisted notion that Jennifer might be complicit in the bank scheme after arriving at the family's home. Cheshire Sergeant Robert Vignola said over the radio, quote, "3 suspects. One is a female, supposedly in the upstairs bedroom, possibly dead, with the other 2. Unquote. That was about 50 minutes after the initial 911 call came in. Those errors may have led the police to take a disastrous hands-off approach to the developing scene. One officer was in the neighborhood when the initial 911 call came in at 9:21 a.m. and actually got to the house before Hayes and Jennifer returned from the bank, but he was ordered not to approach anyone as he watched the SUV pull into the garage, or even make a phone call inside to determine what was happening. Sergeant Vignola instead told Lieutenant Joseph Mazzini, "What I want to do is set up a perimeter, a better perimeter, as soon as everyone is geared up, and then what we are going to wind up doing is we're going to have to make contact." At one point, a police hostage negotiator called in but was told to hold off, the tapes show. After returning inside the house, Hayes raped and strangled Jennifer, and Komisarjewski had sexually assaulted the youngest daughter, Michaela. The 911 tapes were obtained by the Courant from law enforcement sources after the police department said they had been destroyed in a freak lightning accident in September of 2010. The Courant noted its copies were made after September of 2010. The HBO documentary The Cheshire Murders also questioned the police's response in this case. The jury in Hayes' case was composed of 7 women and 5 men. And on October 5, 2010, the jury deliberated for about 4 hours and found Hayes guilty on 16 out of 17 counts related to the home invasion murders. The only count he wasn't indicted on was for the arson. The second phase of the trial began on October 18, 2010, in which the jurors who found Hayes guilty decided if Hayes should be executed or face life in prison. The second day of jury deliberations started on November 6, 2010. Hayes' attorney, Thomas Ullman, told the jury that a life sentence in prison would be the harshest possible punishment for Hayes. He said, "Life in prison without the possibility of release is the harshest penalty. It is a fate worse than death. If you want to end his misery, put him to death. If you want him to suffer and carry out that burden forever, the guilt, the shame, and humiliation, sentence him to life without possibility of release." On November 8, 2010, the jury came back with a recommendation for Stephen Hayes to be executed by the state. The jury imposed a death sentence on each of the 6 capital felony counts for which Hayes was convicted. In the sentencing phase portion of the trial, the jury deliberated for about 17 hours over 3.5 days before arriving to its decision. Hayes had previously attempted to receive a life sentence in a plea bargain. After the verdict, Hayes' defense attorney stated, "Hayes smiled upon hearing the jury's recommendation of a death sentence. He is thrilled. He's very happy with the verdict. That's what he wanted all along." For the first time in the history of Connecticut, the state judicial branch offered post-traumatic stress assistance to jurors who served on the triple murder trial. Because the jurors were required to look at disturbing images and hear grisly testimony during a 2-month trial, their services necessitated these actions. On December 2, 2010, Hayes apologized for the pain and suffering he had caused the Petit family and added, "Death for me will be a welcome relief, and I hope it will bring some peace and comfort to those who I have hurt so much." Dr. Pettit gave a victim impact statement that was 14 pages long. In it, he stated, "I seriously considered suicide many times. No wife, no children, no home, and no interest in life in general. I have been unable to return to my previous work, which had been very intensive, especially under the glare of this tragedy and the complex legal proceedings. But truly, less of the emotional damage to what happened to me. It is from what happened to my family. My wife was raped and strangled in her own home after she had complied with the intruder's wishes. Haley and Michaela died alone, burned alive, and asphyxiated in the sanctuaries of their own bedrooms in the only home they had ever known." Presiding Judge John Blue formally imposed 6 death sentences, 1 for each of the capital charges Hayes was convicted of. Judge Blue then tacked on a sentence of 106 years for the other crimes Hayes committed during the home invasion, including kidnapping, burglary, and assault, before ending with, "This is a terrible sentence, but it is, in truth, a sentence you wrote for yourself in flames. May God have mercy on your soul." The judge also gave Hayes an official execution date of May 27, 2011. Judge Blue said this date was a formality because if Hayes appealed his case, his execution could be delayed for decades. Komisarjevsky's trial began on September 19, 2011. His attorney blamed Hayes for the murders, arguing that their client was a confused and easily persuaded man who didn't intend to kill anyone. On October 13, 2011, Komisarjevsky was convicted on all 17 counts. On December 9, 2011, the jury imposed the death penalty, and on January 27, 2012, Judge John Blue sentenced Komisarjevsky to death by lethal injection. During the hearing, Komisarjevsky insisted he did not intend to kill anyone and spoke about the shame, hurt, and disappointment he had caused. "I will never find peace within. My life will be a continuation of the hurt I caused. The clock is now ticking, and I owe a debt I cannot repay." He said that forgiveness was not his to have, and he needs to forgive his worst enemy, himself. Judge Blue set July 20th, 2012 as Komisarjevsky's execution date. In 2009, the Connecticut General Assembly sent legislation to abolish the state's death penalty to Governor M. Jody Rell, evidently to be signed into law. However, on June 5, 2009, Rell vetoed the bill instead and cited the Cheshire murders as an exemplary reason for doing so. On November 8, 2010, Governor Rell gave the following statement regarding the jury's imposition of a sentence for the death of Hayes. "The crimes that were committed on that brutal July night were so far out of the range of normal understanding that now, more than 3 years later, we still find it difficult to accept that they happened in one of our communities. I have long believed that there are certain crimes so heinous, so depraved, that society is best served by imposing the ultimate sanction on the criminal. Stephen Hayes stands convicted of such crimes, and today the jury has recommended that he should be subjected to the death penalty. I agree." In 2012, Connecticut abolished the death penalty for future crimes. 11 men remained on death row until 2015, when the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled by a vote of 4-3 in State v. Santiago that the death penalty violated the state constitution. The court indicated then that the remaining death row prisoners were entitled to be resentenced to life without parole. However, after one of the justices in the Santiago majority left the court, prosecutors sought and were granted permission to reopen the issue. On May 26, 2016, in State v. Peeler, the court reaffirmed its holding in Santiago by a vote of 5-2. The remaining death row prisoners were resentenced one at a time as their cases were decided in the lower courts. On June 14, 2016, Hayes was the first of the 11 death row inmates to be resentenced. Hayes received 6 life terms without parole. On July 26, 2016, Judge Blue resentenced Komisarjevsky with the max punishment he could extend. Komisarjevsky was given 6 consecutive life terms. Judge Blue said in the resentencing, "Mr. Komisarjevsky, as you know, there have been extensive sentencing remarks previously both by members of the Petit family and people associated with you. I think under those circumstances, I don't need to say any more. Obviously, your crimes were the most extraordinary severity imaginable, and it seems to me, under these circumstances, the most severe sentence allowed by law should be imposed." Komisarjevsky became the 3rd Connecticut death row inmate to have his sentence changed to life in prison since the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty violated the state's constitution's prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. Komisarjevsky filed appeals against the state against his convictions. He claims that the state withheld evidence, including not handing over the complete logs of the murders, and argued his constitutional rights were violated. On April 12, 2021, the Connecticut Supreme Court denied his appeal 7-0. Komisarjevsky requested the U.S. Supreme Court to hear his appeal, and on December 6, 2021, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the Connecticut Supreme Court's decision denying his appeal. Dr. Pettit did not attend the resentencing hearings of Hayes and Komisarjevsky. Amidst all the grief and tragedy, Dr. Pettit found happiness again. In 2008, Dr. Pettit met Christine Palouf at a local country club where she worked as a marketing director. They started talking, and she offered her professional photography services to the Petit Family Foundation. When Komisarjevsky and Hayes went on trial, Christine was there for Dr. Pettit. Sitting behind him in the courthouse with his family, they listened to hours of excruciating testimony. As the 10th anniversary of the murders came and went, Dr. Pettit was no longer defined by tragedy, and with the blessing of Jennifer's family, he married Christine in 2012. In November 2013, they welcomed a son named William Pettit III. In an interview with the Hartford Courant, Dr. Pettit credited his gradual healing to the family and friends. "If you suffered a significant loss, significant injury, psychological, physical, it's tough. I certainly wasn't jumping out of bed in 2007-2008. I had a vast circle of support, and I realized that a lot of people don't have the support that I had." In 2016, Dr. Pettit ran for Connecticut state legislator. He won the race for District 22 and assumed office in 2017, holding the position until January 4, 2023. Dr. Pettit decided not to run again, so he had more flexibility with his schedule and could focus on spending time with his family. His father was 88, his mother 87, neither of whom drove, and his son William is now 9. Dr. Pettit still holds his seat on the board of directors as president for the Petit Family Foundation. The foundation provides help to educate young people, especially in sciences, help those with chronic illnesses, and to help protect those affected by violence. This was inspired by the lives and memories of Jennifer, Haley, and Michaela. For more information about the Petit Family Foundation, please visit petitfamilyfoundation.org and consider making a donation. And that's the case of the Petit family. All source information can be found in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe to Crime Connoisseurs wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow on Instagram at Crime Connoisseurs. In the meantime, keep it classy, connoisseurs, and I'll catch you on the next case. Are you tired of settling for subpar cat food? It's time to upgrade your cat's dining experience with Smalls, the ultimate gourmet meal for your feline companion. Say goodbye to generic one-size-fits-all cat food. With Smalls, you can rest assured that your furry friend is getting the nutrition they deserve. Join the thousands of cat owners who have made the switch to Smalls and see the difference it can make in your cat's health and happiness. Treat your cat to the finest dining experience with Smalls. Visit smalls.sjv.io/ccpod now to order your first box. That's smalls.sjv.io/ccpod. Choose Smalls, because your cat deserves the best.